Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Land to Lots podcast. My name is Carter Froelich, and it's great to be before you again here today. This is part two of a two-part series related to internal rates of return and what are some of the strategies we can utilize to positively impact the three levers that have an impact on a project's internal rate of return. And if you can't remember, or this is your first podcast you're listening to, what those three levers are that impact internal rates of return, their margin, their velocity, and their duration. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what we mean by margin, velocity, and duration, and what is an IRR, go back and listen to part one of the IRR series. Today, we're going to be going through the at least 26 ideas that you can look at to impact your project's internal rate of return. I'm not going to get into excruciating detail on all of these, but should you ever have a question, concern, issue, give me a call, 480-828-9555, and I'm happy to sit down and work with you and make sure that you have an understanding of what we're talking about and what we might be able to do to positively impact the return of your project. So if you take a look at the show notes, and it may be easier to follow, but our matrix is a description of the tool or of the concept that will have an impact on internal rate of return. And then what we've done is that we have outlined what we believe the impact will be to the internal rate of return, be that margin, be that velocity, or be that duration. And so if you want to follow along, we'll jump into it right now. Item number one is consider the use of land purchase options and or joint venture structure to limit the amount of the initial land investment. So obviously, to the extent that we're having to come to the table with less money, which means we're controlling an investment with the least amount of capital, that will be impacting our IRR positively, and we're really looking at the velocity being impacted, and potentially the duration as well with this strategy. Number two, one of the things we strongly recommend, and we do this for some of the largest master plans across the United States, is and I know a lot of companies do it and they do a great job, but it's literally preparing a business plan. And hopefully, you do this in conjunction or prior to your initial purchase, and or you're doing this for your company as a whole, for all of the various different operational divisions you may have. But this is putting together the business plan. What are we trying to do? What are we going to do with this project once we acquire it? How are we going to finance the initial purchase? How are we going to finance the development? What is our time frame? Who are our potential builders that are looking at purchasing this? What do we believe the builder's market will be? Meaning, is this entry level? Is this first time move up? Is this estate? Is this a combination of? And who is going to be working on this project? What are our capital requirements? It's all of the myriad of different issues that one runs into, either planning your business plan for your organization and or a project specific. We call this our launch plan, but without some clear understanding of where you want to go and that time frame at which you want to get there and execute your vision, and to have set up all of the capital resources and personnel, you're never going to get there. So obviously you want to have a clear plan on what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it. All of those questions need to be answered. And obviously, this is going to be impacting all of the different return metrics, margin, velocity, and duration. Second thing, and I'm going to get into a lot of different related to entitlements because I believe that every battle is won before it's fought. And so during the entitlement period, what we want to be able to do is influence the uh, the landscape on which our project will be developed. And we do that in the entitlement process, primarily by putting very favorable and flexible language in the entitlement documents, which could include pre-annexation development agreements, district financing agreements, all the above. So what I'm going to be doing is going through a number of these now. So the first thing is with a development agreement or pre-annexation agreement, we want to add flexible and favorable financing language to that, to the actual agreement that gives us as much control as we possibly can have as it relates to the duration of the agreement, meaning we've had some that are 50 years and the 50 years hasn't been long enough. So, can we do 50-year with two 25-year extensions, for instance? I mean, some of our projects are really big. Number two, how can we move density around the project without having to evoke some sort of specific plan change or comprehensive plan change within the community? What infrastructure can be financed, what districts can be used, what the city is going to finance, what the county is going to finance, what are all the different mechanisms. And here again, this is a really dense subject, and we're not going to get into a lot of it. We're going to touch on a number of different ideas here today. But here again, every project's different, every state's different, every developer's different, every jurisdiction's different. A lot of the concepts that we're going to be discussing here are similar, but we just don't have enough time to talk about all of the various things we could load up a pre-annexation and development agreement, or a financing agreement with here today. But what we're trying to do is to create as much certainty that the jurisdictions will be doing things when we ask them to do, and to create as much flexibility, meaning if we want to move things around or change things, we don't have to go back to them and get their approval. They've already given it to us. So that's the key thing. Item number 4, and this is especially true if somebody is purchasing a project midstream, is review all the previous legal and entitlement agreements to ensure that all reimbursable costs have been identified, that they have been received or will be received, or come in and ask us to perform a look-back diagnostic review. And this is really kind of an interesting topic, because during the Great Recession, we knew that, and here again, it was really sad to kind of see what happened to the home building industry, where everybody got laid off. The builders, both publics and private and regionals, were working with skeleton crews. But we had worked with a lot of these projects, and we knew a lot of the development agreements. And we knew that these divisions, that these companies, that these developers had infrastructure that the cities owed them for. But for wherever reason, the project managers, the land development managers did not want to upset the apple cart by asking the jurisdictions when things were good, to pay them $2, $3, $4 million for fear that they would start slowing up their permits. But when everybody was gone and the revenues weren't coming into the builders, we said, hey, we know that the city owes you money. Let us go back through all your job costs, through all your entitlement agreements. Let's make sure that we're cleaning up and getting paid for all that infrastructure we put in the ground that the city, the jurisdiction, owes us money for. So we looked at 33 divisions. Some of those were development companies, but most of them were public and private builders. And we found $133 million in unreimbursed costs. So I can guarantee you there isn't one organization out there that has nail down 100% of their reimbursable costs. And here again, I don't mean to be flippant, but we have been doing this for 40 years, and we have always found something. And this relates primarily to the number of people that are running through an organization, typically with the public builders, because there's a lot of movement amongst all the different positions, either upward, lateral, or going to a different builder, and projects and agreements just get dropped, and they don't necessarily get into ops, and money gets left behind. So that's one thing that we can do to make sure that we're collecting all of that money that we've worked on or somebody worked on as part of an old development agreement, and that's going to impact margin. One of the easiest things that I love to do is item number 5 is we go in and oftentimes prior to us going into a negotiation with the city, we will take a look at its CAFRA to see if it has any money, any unrestricted funds, and what those funds are that could be used to finance infrastructure. But oftentimes we'll just ask the question, hey city, hey county, why don't you build this road? And we've identified a fund that has the money in it. Why don't we work collaboratively together to get this project launched, no pun intended, and you guys build it. Here again, that's going to impact our margin, and primarily because we're having somebody else pay for it. Number 6, request the jurisdiction to pay its pro rata share of any oversizing charges. Here again, we'll build that which our project is required to build or needs to operate. But if you want us to oversize that, we want you, city, to kick in and pay that. So here again, that's impacting our margin. Number 7, we set up a means by requiring other benefiting landowners pay for their pro rata share of the infrastructure. Here again, we don't want to pay for it and get reimbursed. I want to build it and have the other required or benefiting landowners pay their pro rata share as we are building it, as opposed to a reimbursement. That would be the preferred. So that's item number 7. Number 8, we're always looking at a project pro forma, a job cost. We're looking at the development agreements, the entitlement agreements, the district agreements, and under the lens of our trademark process called the RED analysis, which is how can we reduce, eliminate, or defer our infrastructure spending requirements so that we can push it out further into the pro forma when we're having more and more revenue events. So we're not having to front all those costs day one. We're able to spread them out over the pro forma. So that is impacting both margin, velocity, and the duration. Number 9, and I talked about this a little bit before, but it relates to maintaining flexibility with very broad language in the development agreement or pre-annexation and development agreements or financing agreements to allow us to adapt to changing market conditions over the project's lifeline. Here again, that impacts all 3 of the levers of internal rates of return by allowing us to bob when we need to bob and weave when we need to weave. Number 10, we request reimbursements of eligible project infrastructure via property tax increment. And here again, this if we're going in, guys, and we're enhancing the city's or the county's assessed valuations, and we're building very, very expensive infrastructure that's going to help the jurisdiction create its vision of how it sees itself, we would like to get some of that TIF or that property tax increment to reimburse us for some of this eligible infrastructure. Number 11 is very similar to number 10 in that to the extent that we're creating and generating additional transaction privilege tax, either through the construction of the infrastructure, through the sales of the homes, or if we have retail, commercial, industrial components, we want to try to grab some of that sales tax or transaction privilege tax reimbursements for us to offset the cost of this infrastructure. Number 12 is one of the things that we always want to try to do, and this gets into the entitlement and construction, is to make sure we're using the best consultants that we can in the space, as it relates to entitlements, to special districts, to engineering, to surveying, to construction management, project management, all of the various different components, because to the extent that we're using the best people possible, we're able to move this project forward. Plus, they know where a lot of the bodies are buried. They know what the cities will do, what they won't do, and where we may be able to push them, where we may not be able to push them. But all of this leads to us being able to move quicker in the process, and we're dealing with entities that have proven track records, and they can move the ball down the field. Here again, time is money, and time and money equals an impact on IRR. Number 13, reduce borrowing costs. So here again, this relates to equity, this relates to construction loans, and this relates to setting up districts. So over time, we're issuing tax-exempt bonds to either construct infrastructure and or reimburse us. And we're doing that at tax-exempt interest rates. And this again is with the special districts, we're borrowing money we don't have to pay back. That's being passed on to the homeowners. Here again, this assumes that we're not getting piggy. Going on to number 14, we competitively bid construction projects to reduce costs. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, but it's amazing what can happen when you go out and competitively bid. You always want to make sure you're getting your lowest price for your construction. Obviously, that is going to be impacting your margin. Number 15, consider performance bonuses for early completion, meaning, hey guys, we're going to enter into a contract, but if you go fast, we're going to give you a completion bonus because you got done earlier or there were cost savings. So we're going to share that with you, and that will be impacting both margin potentially and velocity. Number 16, improve construction efficiencies and optimize construction timelines to bring projects to market sooner. Here again, that will impact velocity and your duration, meaning the sooner you get some of this stuff done, the sooner you're able to sell it and bring money into the pro forma. Number 17, and this one is near and dear to my heart, everybody, it's create special districts to finance public infrastructure. Whether we're talking about CFDs in Hawaii, California, Arizona, CDDs in Florida, MUDs, PIDs, TERS, MMDs in Texas, Metro Districts in Colorado, PIDs in Utah, CIDs in Idaho, all the different acronyms, and the BFD, which is my favorite district. Just kidding. That's a little play on initials there. But really what we're doing is we're creating districts to reimburse us for infrastructure. And ultimately, what we're really striving to do right now, especially in this interest rate environment, and this is an interest rate environment that I don't see us ever continuing, meaning the days of free money or nearly free money, at least as it relates to our industry, are over. I don't see us going that low again. So we're going to have to tap into the public debt markets. We're going to have to issue tax-exempt bonds to fund our public infrastructure, to allow us to reduce our cost of capital. And what we're really pushing to do right now is to build out of bond proceeds. So in other words, we're not having to use high-priced equity. We're not having to use third-party lending, but we are actually trying, and we're meeting with success, to tap into the public debt markets, issue bonds, and build eligible public infrastructure out of the bond proceeds. So that impacts margin, because assuming we're not going to be impacting our tax rate vis-a-vis the competition, here again, we know we're going to be increasing it, but we're going to be able to be reimbursed for those costs of the infrastructure. We're going to sell the land, obviously, for the full boat that we would naturally get. So that will be impacting our margin. We're also going to be increasing the velocity of the project. Hopefully, we're building things and we're moving through the project. And as a result of that, we're also impacting duration. Number 18, not only are we're going to utilize the special districts, but we're going to be maximizing the amount of bond funding that we can get. And here again, depending upon what state we're in, depending upon what type of district we're utilizing, and we've used all of them, all over the country over the last 40 years we've been in business. But we are going to prepare a market-driven bond sizing so that we can tell you our opinion. What is the maximum we think we can get up to without impacting velocity of home sales for the builders? At the end of the day, we realize that we are either builders selling to homeowners or we are land developers selling to builders that have to sell to homeowners. And we want to be very conscientious of where the market is. But at the same time, I want to be able to provide alternatives to our clients so they can decide how far up to the line they want to go. And then ultimately taking that information, dropping it into a client's pro forma to show how impactful that is to their internal rate of return. And we do that with Launch's market-driven bond sizing. Number 19 is maximize district financing alternatives using what we call the eligible cost and fee analysis. Sometimes we find, oddly enough, that we have more bonding capacity than we have potential, or at least what the client thinks they have eligible infrastructure. So we go through and we say, hey, listen, you thought your eligible infrastructure was only $20 million. We believe it's closer to $32 million because here are additional fees that we could finance, additional infrastructure that we could finance, and or other items that would qualify as eligible infrastructure. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving any money on the ground, and that we're to the extent that we have the bonding capacity, we're utilizing it most efficiently and bringing all of that into the pro forma. Here again, that hits all the different levers: margin, velocity, and duration. Number 20, I talked to this one before, but we want to push building public infrastructure out of bond proceeds. Here again, that lowers the amount of cash we have to come to the table with and increases the velocity and potentially the duration and ultimately the margin as well of the project. Number 21, utilizing the launch reimbursement system. Now, a lot of people go, what is the launch reimbursement system and why would I want to consider utilizing it? Well, the launch reimbursement system is something that we've developed over the years to keep track of all the required documents that are necessary to submit to a jurisdiction to get reimbursed for eligible infrastructure. And I can tell you, this is a thankless job. Most of the developers that I've seen from those who you would think would be very sophisticated, they don't do a very good job of doing this because a lot of times the paperwork falls through the cracks, and or people are in and out of this role and they just miss stuff. But to the extent that you can assemble these reimbursement binders and get them processed through the district, through the jurisdiction, the quicker you're going to get your money. So this is just, a matter of putting together the binders as quickly as possible, getting them submitted, and getting your checks flowing back into your pro forma. And that obviously impacts your velocity and of your money and potentially the duration of the project, because you've got a special district. Hopefully you're building faster and able to cycle through the project. But I cannot tell you enough how important this role is in the special district arena, because if you do not have your data and your backup material that is required, and here again, all states are different, but if you don't have it, if you can't demonstrate that you've got all the documents, you're not going to get repaid. And I know on other podcasts I've told horror stories of this, but do not neglect this aspect of your business if you're using special purpose taxing districts. Number 22, and this is one that we just invented. and we're really, really proud of it. And it relates to Texas primarily, Texas only at this point. But one of the biggest challenges we found with the municipal utility districts, and often within the MUD is where all the profit for the land developers was, is that because the MUDs use general obligation bonds that are issued off of the assessed valuation, the land developers needed to sell lots, get those lots built, get houses sold, get C of Os, and get them on the tax rolls before the land developers could issue debt upfront and build and reimburse themselves for eligible infrastructure. And oftentimes this took years. Well, we developed a mechanism with some of the other professionals, and it took 3 years to do this, but we did it, and we're actually issuing debt upfront, where we're issuing bonds to forward fund future MUD reimbursements. And that money is coming and flowing back into the pro formas of the developers, years in advance of when otherwise would have normally come in. So that is really impacting what we believe is both margin, because we're paying down, in some instances, higher price debt, velocity, and duration. It's having a massive, massive impact on the IRRs of projects that are using MUDs. Additionally, we've also developed a land secured launch bond. And here again, we don't know what to call these things, so we're calling them launch bonds. But this one works in all states, and it allows us to do taxable land secured deals. And typically these deals are done on uh, even though they're a higher interest rate than what you would see with a traditional lender, they're secured by the land only, they're non-recourse, but they have a longer term and better terms than what a third-party lender would be able to provide. Therefore, we think this is a great means by which that we can impact the velocity and duration of a project, and therefore the IRR related to that. And now we're coming into number 24, which is establish development impact fee service areas to finance public infrastructure not funded or reimbursed by special districts. And I know there are some builders out there that are probably going, "What in the hell are you wanting to do here?" And well, like I said, we've been fighting impact fees for 40 years around the country. And it really depends on who's paying us. If it's the master developers, typically we're looking at getting impact fees higher. And if it's the builders, we're looking at getting them lower. But where we find ourselves now, guys, realistically, is that the cost of infrastructure has gotten so high, and the requirements that the jurisdictions are putting on the master developers is no longer the Toyota, it's the Rolls Royce, and the costs are just going through the roof, right? And as a result of this, it is almost impossible to get some of these higher uh, uh, enhanced infrastructure packages that are being applied against large land developments to pencil unless we get reimbursed for these costs. And so what we're doing is working with jurisdictions and the master developers to set up separate service areas whereby, to the extent that we're not financing the infrastructure, and here again, we're talking about offsite and on-site backbone infrastructure. To the extent that we're not getting reimbursed for that, we want to pick it up through impact fees, and that is a way for us to increase our margins. And the biggest problem that we found, and why we want to set up our own service area over our own master plan community, is that if a builder is pulling a permit and they're paying an impact fee, we want to be able to say to that builder, builder A, you're paying this road infrastructure impact fee, and it is for the arterial, it's for the parkway that runs through our project. If you're paying a water resource fee, it's our water resource fee. If you're paying a park fee, that park impact fee dollars are going into our parks in the master plan that are public parks. They're not going to a park that is not serving our project, which we have seen so many times. So here again, we're making sure that all of the infrastructure backbone, offsite and on, is being financed, to the extent possible through special districts and or impact fees. And item number 25 relates very specifically to impact fees as well. But if we're constructing development impact fee eligible public infrastructure, we want to make sure that we're getting the required DIF credits that are, and we're passing those on to the builders, or the reimbursements are coming back to us. But we have seen so many times, and development impact fees are so misunderstood, to be honest with everybody. Most jurisdictions don't understand them. A lot of times attorneys don't understand them. We've been working with the NHB and we wrote the handbook on development impact fees. We really understand development impact fees, and we want to make sure that you are getting the full boat credit for infrastructure you're constructing, and you're getting the credits and or reimbursements that you deserve. Here again, that's impacting your margins. Number 26, one of the things that we want to do to make sure that we're getting the biggest amount of money coming into our cash flow sooner rather than later is to add favorable appraisal valuation methodologies in our development and financing agreements, to ensure that when the appraiser goes out to value the land, that they're looking at the criteria that have been laid out for this special district. So they're coming back with the highest land valuation. And as a result of that, we're able to issue a bigger bond to bring into the cash flow sooner rather than later, to offset costs of infrastructure, either through building out of bond proceeds or repaying the developer. That impacts velocity and duration. One of the other things that we can do is, as being the master developer, and this is item number 27, is structure lot sales to allow for the value creation that we're generating through the development and planning of the community to be a percentage of home sales prices above a certain threshold. Therefore, if the home builder is selling homes at a price point that's higher than we had residualed our lots at, we're sharing that value, and part of that is coming back to us, because we've created a great community. A lot of people want to be here. We've gone through the entitlements, we've built the infrastructure, and we want to share with share with our builder partners the value creation that we have generated as part of this project. Here again, to the extent that we're able to get paid a premium on our lot sales by sharing in these ups of the home sales, that's going to impact our margin. And I know the brokers at Land Advisors are really, really good, at this, and they've got a lot of other ideas that we can utilize as well. But these are just 27, and here again, I think I said 26, and we actually have 27 different items that we can consider as it relates to impacting our internal rate of return. Should you want to talk about any of these strategies, give me a call, okay? And I've given you my cell phone number. It's 480-828-9555. My email is carter@launch-dfa.com. Send me a note, give me a call. If it goes to voicemail, I'll call you back. But we want to be of service to the development and home building industry. We're strictly private sector representatives in matters of development and finance, and we want to be a service to you. And our mission is to be a hero to the development and home building industry. So don't be bashful. Give us a call. If you find that this is a meaningful discussion, I would hope that you would share it with your other team members, and that you would subscribe to the Land to Lots podcast wherever you get your podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the 2 episodes related to internal rate of return, and look forward to chatting with you on our next podcast. Thank you, and have a great day.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.